thank you, Barry, and thank you to the video. But honestly, I think most people were just excited about my dog. I was out earlier in the lobby, and I was like hanging out, and somebody's like, "Look at that amazing dog! Oh my gosh, look at her work! Incredible! Man's best friend! What a noble creature!" And I'm walking in the bathroom, and I'm like, "I think that guy climbed Everest blind." So that's fine. That's fine. I'm taking it back seat to my dog. I was when I first got her, I was sitting in the second to front row of this theater, ready to go up on stage. And these two guys were sitting in front of me. They didn't know I was the speaker. And this one guy, he turns to his friend and he says, "I hope this guy isn't boring." And his friend whispers back, "Well, if he is, you know he's blind. We can just walk out, we won't know the difference." So in the meantime, I trained my sweet dog to attack anyone who makes any such movements towards the door. So feel free to use the bathroom. You can outrun her. Nah, she's a lover. She's not a killer. Yeah, good girl. So, it was mentioned all these accomplishments. Climbing Everest and doing these big things, and those are fun to talk about. And this is such a successful group here that each of you can stand up here and talk about accomplishments. That's fun to do. But I think what doesn't get talked about enough is the struggle. Talk about struggle. I was just this year, I had a great climbing year. I got to Patagonia. The ends of the earth. Climbed this beautiful tower. Are we looking at this video? Yeah? Yeah. Here we go. Yeah, Patagonia, and climbing this beautiful tower, the tourists are climbing north face, as we, it's just so freezing cold, you know? I had 3 down jackets on, and I was hungry and thirsty, and the wind was hammering down the face. You know, it's moments like that where you're thinking like, I can't imagine being any place better in the world than Oria, speaking to AICPA folks. So this is like really great to be down here and having an excuse to come down to sea level. But anyway, there's lots of struggle on these journeys, and that doesn't get talked about enough. It's been a struggle to live this no barriers life. I call it a no barriers life. And how do you define it? It's deeply personal for each and every human being. And then how do you push the parameters of what it can be? And then the hardest part for me, at least, is those days when you feel like you're you're failing it and you're bleeding it. And I think the hardest part, I think part of the equation of living this kind of life is understanding the learning process. This process of growth and change and transformation that we're all a part of, and then trying to figure out how to dive into that experience and illuminate what that map looks like that we're trying to build to navigate our lives forward. And what do those elements look like along the way? These universal elements that are like signposts, they're like cairns on a trail, or like waypoints on a GPS, or like holes on a rock face that lead you forward and give you clues to where you are, where you're going, why it's so important we get there. And I wish that process of growth and change and transformation, I wish it was easier. It's not. I was part of this expedition a few years ago. It was called Welcome to Earth, and it was they sent all these National Geographic explorers out into the world studying these natural phenomena. I got to go to the island chain of Vanuatu, and we were studying the most active volcano in the world. The local people call it Yasser, it's their local god. And little did I know we were going to be rappelling down into the very bowels of the volcano to set up this scientific equipment that would study the sound waves of the volcano and maybe predict future eruptions and save lives around the world. I lived through that experience, and afterwards we stood on the rim. I stood there with the host, Will Smith. Sorry to name drop, but it was cool meeting Will Smith. And by the way, he was very kind. He didn't slap me off the side of the volcano or anything. We sat there listening to the most beautiful, most intense sound I think I've ever heard in my life. These truck-sized magma bombs exploding out of the vents and shooting a half a mile into the sky and then splashing back down into these lava lakes that would then reverberate and crash up against the walls of the caldera like the waves of an ocean. Check this out. And standing there on the rim with Will, it was this stark reminder to me that, although we wish growth was like this nice neat arc upward, nice consistent arc upward with a nice crescendo and some violin music plays and we eat some popcorn and we go home changed forever. It doesn't work that way. Growth is more like a volcano. It's tumultuous. It's like red hot magma spewing into the sky, annihilating everything in its path. And then over time, it cools and it lays a second scale of the earth. And it nourishes the soil and all life comes blazing back even stronger. It's this continual process of endings and renewals, death and rebirth. And as my friend Jeff Evans says, it isn't for the faint-hearted. And that's the way I felt at 40 years old, embarking on this brand new sport of whitewater kayaking for the blind. Yeah, I stood on the banks of the Colorado River, and I'd already climbed the tallest peak in every continent. So I was thinking, as I listened to the roar of the river below me, why am I so terrified? Starting over is so vulnerable. I felt like I was nauseated. It felt like I was going to throw up on the side of the river, just knowing that I was about to go into this massive rapid and not being able to see any of it, just relying on what I'm feeling under my boat and what my guide is telling me. So many questions without answers. That's the scary part. Questions without answers when you start these processes. And how is my guide going to guide me down the river when communication is so important? If you're a foot too far to the left or too far to the right, is the difference between getting through the rapid and getting hammered. How am I going to hear him when we're separated by 20 or 30 foot walls of water? Questions without answers. And there are those days and those thousands of hours of preparation where you're just pinballing down the river, bouncing off of rocks, slamming into the side of the canyon wall, my elbows, blood splattering everywhere, flipping over, panicking underwater, pulling the spray skirt on my kayak and swimming for my life through these rapids. And I get out of the river that day, and I sit on the shore, and I say, Eric, you got to keep it positive today. What'd you learn? A lot of days I was learning why there aren't that many blind kayakers in the world. But all that flailing and bleeding and that pledge, that was my No Barriers pledge, and that was to kayak the Grand Canyon, 277 miles. Not to prove that blind people can do this or that. That sort of feels shallow, but to break out of these prisons that we find ourselves in. And live life fully, whatever that means for you. For me, it's been experiencing these natural wonders of the world, like the Grand Canyon. The walls, they're billions of years old. You don't see them. You can hear it. And the Colorado River being the gauntlet to some of the most amazing whitewater in the world. I wanted to experience it all. So 6 years of training, we left with my amazing team. Head of that team was Harlan Tanny, half human, half dolphin. Amazing kayaker. And we were crushing it. One day after the next, until that is day 16. That's lava falls. Lots of big rapids on the Grand Canyon, but head and shoulders biggest is lava. It's a 10 out of 10 on the Grand Canyon scale. And so you get out of the river and you scout it, right? Very important for a blind guy to scout a rapid. Think about I'm scouting it in Braille because Harlan's taking my finger and he's running it through the map of lava. When you go into these situations, how do you feel at first? I feel like I'm riding a wave just on the edge of chaos. But if you stop to understand your environment, not just the sliver of awareness on the surface, but in its three-dimensional way, beneath the surface, you begin, I think, to understand that through that chaos is a map. It's counterintuitive. And lava has a very counterintuitive map because if you try to go straight into lava, you're going to be destroyed. So you have to start in and slip in from the right. You actually ride this little slip of current. You're just to the left of this eddy fence, these massive waves that rise up like 5 feet. And you're riding just on the edge of it. You hit these boils, this energy source that comes up from the bottom of the river, smashes against the shore, whips you like a monster's tail back into the ledge hole, this giant washing machine that wants to grab you and suck you down. You get by that, you hit the V waves, these massive waves that come together in a V. If you do it right, you bump just to the left of the V, it catapults you into the river, to the middle. You got to square up right away against the big kahuna waves, 20, 30-foot waves crashing over you one after the next. You squeak by what's called cheese grater rock. That's self-explanatory. And you ride away tail waves and whirlpools out of lava. I got in my boat. I was so nervous. 6 years of training came down to this moment. And I rode that slip of current and I hit that first boil. And I think I got inside my head because I reacted too slowly. And I was upside down. Upside down at the top of Lava Falls, the worst place in the river to be upside down. I rolled up, I just missed the ledge hole. I went through the V-wave in this massive cartwheel. I rolled up, now I couldn't get around, I was going through the big kahuna waves backwards, not part of the map. I got knocked over, barely got a breath, got knocked over again. I couldn't hear Harlan anywhere. Where was he? Turns out that he was having an epic of his own. He put his paddle up against one of these massive waves, and the wave busted his carbon fiber paddle in half. It smashed him in the nose. He was upside down, blood pouring out of his nose, 2 halves of a splintered paddle. Thinking, how am I going to roll up? I got to communicate with Erik. I can't let him down. And I panicked, and I pulled my skirt, and I was swimming blind through Lava Falls. So there's lots of struggle on these journeys. It's not all triumph. The triumph's beautiful when it happens, but the struggle's constant. And sorry, you're probably thinking like, this is the worst motivational speaker I've ever heard. This is going to get motivation. But it's true. These barriers in life that want to knock you flat on your back as you try to live a life that matters. I've been fascinated by how teams and individuals, how they move forward or how they don't. And my second book was called The Adversity Advantage, and I teamed up with a scientist, Dr. Paul Stoltz. He's an expert in adversity, helping people around the world to change their relationship with adversity. And we did a study around the world, and we came away understanding very, very simply put, people fall into 3 categories. We call them quitters, campers, or climbers. Now, quitters are self-explanatory. We're not going to talk about them today, but campers we found were this fascinating group because, well, they made up so much of the world. These people who start out climbing with excitement and hope and optimism, as we all do. And then somewhere along that ascent, things get in the way. We lose belief in ourselves, or in the team, or in the cause. We feel cynicism pouring down around our minds like prison bars. Or maybe we try something big and bold. We step out of the box and we get shoved back, we get shattered. And the next time we get to that nice, safe plateau, we say, I'm going to stay right here. I'm not going any higher. It's too scary, too risky. Or maybe we're climbing up the mountain, slowly but surely. One barrier after the next, they just keep getting in our way, killing our momentum, shoving us to the sidelines, sometimes into these dark places. Personally, we begin to stagnate. But worse than that, all our energy, all our life force, all our contributions, they're lost to the world. Climbers are a rare group. If I could see, I know I'd be looking at a lot of climbers out here. They're those of us who continue to figure out a way to grow and evolve and explore and challenge ourselves every day of our lives until the day we die. And so the question I ask myself every day is, how do I climb? When it makes so much more sense, it is so much easier to camp. I understand camping at first-hand level because when I was a kid in middle school, I started going blind from this very rare eye disease called retinoschisis. It unraveled my retina, so every morning I would wake up with a new lessened reality of vision. It was like a storm that was on the horizon, getting closer and closer, descending upon me with such force and viciousness. I thought I'd be crushed by it. Sitting in the cafeteria at a table by myself, listening to all the excitement and laughter and joy and food fights passing me by that I wanted to be a part of. And yeah, I was looking at my life through a rearview mirror into the past, all the things I'd lost, all the things I'd never experienced. And yeah, I was afraid to go blind and see darkness, but even more than that, I was afraid that I would be shoved to the sidelines into that dark place. I'd be left there, I'd be forgotten, a life lived for nothing, a life that was meaningless. I mean, going blind was scary, but not living fully was terrifying. Way more terrifying than anything blindness could do to me. But I was lucky as well at the time because I had a great family, a great support system. My dad was my biggest cheerleader, my greatest mentor. And that role was made even more important. And at that time, my mother was killed in a car accident. And when a lot of kids were sitting on their dad's knee and they were reading them fairy tales, my dad had me on his knee reading me motivational poems. This is him in his later life, reading his favorite poem.
I send it to sons and daughters when I think they could use it, but it's when things go wrong, as they sometimes will, and the road you're trudging seems all uphill, and the funds are low, the debts are high, and you want to sigh, you have to cry. But when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit.
My dad had quite a story of his own. He graduated from Princeton. He was an engineer. He was captain of his football team. And a lot of poor kids at that time were being drafted into the Vietnam War. And he felt that was unfair, so he signed up. He joined the Marines, became an aviator. He flew 119 missions over Vietnam in his A-4 Skyhawk. And he told me that the scariest part was coming in after a mission, and you can't see where the runway is. You can't see the base. And what relief it would give him when they line up the runway. And at that time, one of the things I was still hanging on to was mountain biking. I loved riding my mountain bike, even though I could barely see how to run out one eye. I'd come down my driveway and I built these ramps, and I'd fly in the air and I'd land on this plyboard landing ramp. And one day I came around the corner and my eyesight had diminished so much I couldn't see the ramps. They blended into the pavement beneath, and I went off the side and fell over. There was blood and tears, and I pushed my bike up into the garage, and I was devastated. This part of my life was now over. And I didn't notice that my dad was there in the garage. He was painting a piece of furniture, and I went to sleep. I woke up the next morning and said, let's try it again. I thought, I don't know, maybe I got some sight back in the night, I'll try it again. And I came around the corner, and my dad was right. The ramp was lit up. Like imagine contrails in the sky, imagine bioluminescence in a dark sea. He had painted the ramp a very bright orange. And I could see it for another 6 months. And I went over the ramp and I landed and I rode around like Evel Knievel, and my family, actually my dad and my two brothers, laid down between the ramps so I could jump over them. And see, my dad could have easily said, no more bike riding. It's not in the cards. But instead, he painted the ramp orange. He lit up the runway. And it was the first time in my life I glimpsed what this no barriers life could look like, could become. And so it was a few months after that, going totally blind, that I got this newsletter in Braille. And it was a group taking blind kids rock climbing. For the first